Hey everybody, thanks for joining me as I take a look at a stack of vinyl that I purchased recently and a couple other things along the way. I'm going to start off right away with the Shadowland by Inverted. Swedish death metal band. This is their debut full-length album from 1996. They would follow it up with the second album in 1997 before breaking up. This is the 2026 Hell's Headbangers reissue. And take a look at my vinyl. Got the blue and white Sunburst, which I believe is the most common of the variants for this one, but also the coolest looking, I thought. Got the Obi script that Hell's been doing fairly often these days. And when I say Swedish death metal, they sound nothing like the bands you would first think of, like Entombed and Dismember. Definitely more of an American sound, most closely resembling Deicide. Now, what makes them a little bit different and a little bit more Swedish than that might have you believe is that they have a lot of melodic Swedish Black Death bands kind of thrown in there, but not the fast melodic stuff. Kind of talking the more slower and epic moments of fellow Swedes like Dissection, Winterland, Sacramentum. Moments like that thrown in here that I think makes the album kind of unique. My favorite tracks are Circle of Candles and then The Dark and Bitter Moon, a little bit of a different sounding track. And speaking of Hell's Headbangers, Dead by Dog is in 4 days. I will definitely be there at the show. Will I be at the Open Warehouse and Ohio Death Fest? To be honest, 30% chance, but we'll see what happens. And actually, before I stop talking about Inverted, J-Dog himself mentioned that he would definitely be interested in having Inverted play the third Dead by Dog show if they could make it happen and if he throws a third show at all, which I hope is the case. Next up, Prehistoric Metal, the 21st, I think, full-length album by Norwegian, at this point, kind of black metal band, Darkthrone. So before we get to that, the last one I bought from Darkthrone was 2019's Old Star, and it's only been several years, but I think there's like 4 albums that are in between these two releases. But I think this one's pretty good. My favorite song on here is definitely The Hardship of the Scots. They rip off that Let Me Put My Love Into You riff by AC/DC, but they make it a little more metal, and that's like my favorite AC/DC song, and I think that riff sounds awesome on this album. But back to the new one. This was released on Peaceville in 2026, just on black vinyl I got here. So to be honest, this is good, not great. It's like Darkthrone have been given a pass by the metal world, where it's like an old friend that they, you're gonna grow old with. There's some good, there's some bad. It's the same, it's different. People are fond of the band members, so it's just kind of a band that's been given the freedom to have some fun and do what they want. And the best thing about this album is definitely the riffs. There's not too much black metal in the Darkthrone sound anymore. Black and heavy metal is what they do, and they are good at crafting some really fun and awesome riffs. My favorite songs on here are probably Deeply Rooted, which brings to mind some of the more Celtic Frost inspired stuff of the mid period of Darkthrone. The Closer, Eon 4. And I also quite like the 3-minute interlude, So I Marched to the Sunken Empire. So that's about all I have to say for Prehistoric Metal by Darkthrone. Okay, before we get to the next one, actually, as I was looking through my CDs this morning, I was reminded of two musicians that we have lost way too soon. First one was Jennifer Finch, bassist for all-female punk hard rock band L7. I was a big fan of them back in the day, and I sold some of their releases, but I still am very fond of Brickstar Heavy, their third and, by most people's estimation, best album. But we lost Jennifer to cancer in the past week. Rest in peace to her. Same with Lou Kohler from Sick of It All. Definitely one of the most legendary names in New York hardcore. I love this album. I don't listen to a ton of hardcore these days, but Sick of It All were one of the best, and Lou was, by all accounts, a great guy. So, very sad, and come to think of it, we have one more person that we lost to cancer to be discussed in just a couple minutes. So next album we're going to look at is Psychoptic, The Pulse of Annihilation, the 9th full-length album by Australian technical death metal band, again, Psychoptic. And I'm not really into technical death metal, but throughout the last couple years, I've heard a couple things that made me feel like I might actually be able to get into this band. So on my birthday, about a week ago, the wife and I were kind of browsing around the record store. She told me to pick up a couple things for myself, and I thought that this looked pretty interesting, so I took a chance on it. And you know what? I'm glad I did. Before we get into the music a bit, I guess kind of a gold with a bit of black. And the first song that really grabbed me was song number 3, A Sword of Me. Very immediate, and I would have to imagine probably like a first single. I think most people would kind of reference that song after the first 1 or 2 listens. But as I continued to listen to it, and I was very surprised that I listened to this thing for pretty much a week straight. Again, a genre of music that I generally don't get into that much. Second side of the vinyl, title track, Annihilation Pulse, great song. And then the following 3 to end the album, just banger after banger. So that second half, Annihilation Pulse, No Blade of Grass, To Embrace This Curse, and Forging the Ground. Those songs are all awesome. Great album. I have to admit that when I was listening to the back catalog a bit, the first 2 full-length albums have a different vocalist. That was more like a varied death metal approach, whereas the guy that's been on board since the last 6 albums is a little bit closer to a more hardcore vocal approach. But nonetheless, for technical death metal, I found these songs very catchy and memorable. And again, I'm surprised how much I was into it. So, that's it for that one. And finally, we're going to look at The Ghosts of a Future Dead, the 8th album by melodic death metal legends At the Gates. From Sweden, of course. Got another single black vinyl here. Before we get to that, like At the Gates, band I'm definitely very familiar with, but you know, through the years, like the first 2, and actually the only 2 I still own, the debut, The Red in the Sky Is Ours, and then their most well-known album, Slaughter of the Soul. For many years, I was very familiar with these, kind of ignoring a lot of what happened in between and after, following their their reformation. But is this the final At the Gates album? Now that Thomas Lindbergh has unfortunately passed away from cancer, I would have to imagine it is, although I don't think that has been stated at this point. I really don't see them going forward without him, though. And while this is a cool album, I do find it a little bit straightforward for my tastes, and the songs are kind of too short. They don't really hook me, and then the song's over. But that is kind of what the last several At the Gates albums are about for the most part. Few bands really find that perfect balance between melody and ferocity, like At the Gates. And my favorite songs on this are probably The Dissonant Void, Interstellar Death, and I'm going to say The Unfathomable. This was released this year on Century Media. I've seen At the Gates twice. I saw them on the Decibel tour, as it was like an awesome package. Vow and Fire, Converge, Paul Bearer, and At the Gates headlining. The second time I saw them was maybe 3-4 years ago, and I thought it'd be kind of cool because I was actually in Gothenburg on vacation because I have a sister that lives in the area. And then when I arrived back in Toronto, At the Gates were playing like 48 hours after, and I was like, you know what, I got to, it's just fitting, I got to go and see that. And they played, to my recollection, like 10 randoms At the Gates songs. Then they finished it up by playing Slaughter of the Soul from beginning to end. And I remember when that show ended, Thomas Lindbergh was, like, even before I knew he was sick, I just remember saying that guy seemed like a really appreciative performer and just seemed happy to be there and happy that people were there to watch him perform. And that's the way I'll always remember him. Instantly recognizable vocal style, very prolific through the years, and by all accounts a good guy. So rest in peace, Thomas. That's it for me today, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.